After Spider-Man No Way Home, Tom Holland set a timeline for how long he wanted to continue playing Spider-Man. While he's the third actor to represent the wall crawler in live action, he's also the only one who might continue to do so after the third feature. Spider-Man 4 is already in production, effectively guaranteeing Holland's role as Spider-Man. However, we may only have a few more years to wait until we're sure if he's leaving us or not. Of course, this has created an outrage in the Marvel community because they love Tom Holland's Spider-Man portrayal and don't want him to leave just yet. So, do you think he'll put on the costume again for years to come? Well, here's what we know. So, what is it about Tom Holland that makes him so appealing to fans? Unlike all earlier projects, Holland's Spider-Man made his debut in an ensemble movie rather than a solo feature, and Marvel Studios opted to bring him into the MCU through Joe and Anthony Russo's Captain America: Civil War in 2016, when he was recruited by Tony Stark for Team Iron Man. Peter then proceeded on his first assignment in Spider-Man Homecoming, battling the Vulture, and in Spider-Man Far From Home, fighting Mysterio. In between his solo films, he officially joined the Avengers in their fight against Thanos in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. This diversity is exactly what made fans all over the world fall in love with his character. In Spider-Man No Way Home, Holland's web-slinger was faced with his most personal mission yet, fighting interdimensional villains. The character's identity was virtually stolen from him when he took the decision to save Earth from a multiversal disaster at the end of the film. Fortunately, the actor's journey has already been confirmed to continue in the upcoming MCU Spider-Man trilogy. Holland, on the other hand, may no longer be portraying the role, as he recently told Esquire Middle East that he may have decided when the ideal moment is to put away his superhero costume. He stated that if he's still portraying Spider-Man at the age of 30 and hasn't given the baton to someone like Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, or someone more diverse, then he's failed in his duty to the role. It all makes sense now. Good one, Tom. Holland is currently 25 years old. Given that he'll be appearing in other projects in addition to becoming Spider-Man, Spider-Man 4 is unlikely to be released until at least 2 to 3 years. The actor will be 27, 28 by then, and if he sticks to his self-imposed deadline, the next Spider-Man film might be his final one as the wall crawler. That said, it's not really set in stone that he'll leave the job by the time he's 30. For what it's worth, many of the actors who play superheroes these days are much older. So Marvel Studios and Sony can turn Peter Parker into a mentor-type figure for his predecessors like Iron Man. Holland's remark is eerily similar to Robert Downey Jr.'s statement when asked when Iron Man would be retired a few years ago. The contrast is that Tony Stark had already been acting as Peter Parker's mentor at the time. In comparison, Holland's character seemed to be just getting started with his story following Spider-Man No Way Home. Director John Watts claims that his Spider-Man trilogy serves as the character's origin story. This means that he still has a lot of things to do in the future, so it would be a mistake to dismiss him so quickly. Who knows, maybe he'll keep filming Spider-Man films even after he's 30. However, given how hard the man has been working, we must recognize his need for a breather. Is this the end of Tom Holland's career then? Isn't his career just getting started? Our Spider-Man hero could even be exploring a career change. Tom Holland seems to need some time away from the stress and hustle of show business, but his exhaustion could be permanent, and his retirement from the entertainment industry could be near. Try not to cry, Marvel lovers all across the world. Bad news is on the way as the charming Tom Holland, arguably the most well-known young Hollywood actor today, is reported to be thinking about totally leaving the game. Nothing has been the same for the present Peter Parker in the flesh since his debut as Spider-Man, who has gained not only followers but also a huge number of jobs for people in the Hollywood industry. In addition to his superhero role, Tom Holland recently appeared in the Uncharted film, in which he played another action character, demonstrating his comfort in adopting roles that appeal to the public today. But it might be all over soon since, based on all he revealed in his interview with Sky News, it doesn't look too good. In an interview with Sky News, the British actor revealed that he's going through a crisis that's making him wonder if the life he's living is truly what he wants. That's why, if he takes a hiatus, it could spell the end of his career as an actor. Holland claims that he has no idea if he wants to be an actor, which is understandable since he began acting at the young age of 11. He hasn't done anything else in his life since, and he wants to look into other career choices. Because he's just 25, it appears like our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is going through a pre-midlife crisis. What could be his last project if he retires? That would be a series called The Crowded Room, starring Amanda Seyfried, which he's going to shoot for Apple's streaming channel. At the end of this project, Holland could very well take advantage of the fact that he doesn't have a continuing exclusive contract with Marvel and take a much-needed break to organize his thoughts and decide what he wants to do with his future as an actor, or even as a normal human being in general. Because we believe that's what he truly wants, to get away from all the attention and fame. But wait, we have some potentially good news for you. His retirement announcement could be a ruse. Tom Holland made multiple statements shortly after the release of Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures' Spider-Man No Way Home, referring to his tenure as Peter Parker coming to an end. In an interview, Holland revealed that he could want to step down from the role of Peter Parker so that someone else might portray the Spidey, especially mentioning Miles Morales. Holland's contradictory words on returning to the role have become clear in recent weeks, indicating that he's been bargaining through the media. This is a common approach used to sway new negotiations or contracts by openly expressing plans not to renew them, causing the other side to sweeten the deal, perhaps resulting in better compensation for Holland. Smart. Will Tom Holland resign from Spider-Man? Well, yeah, eventually, because no actor can portray one character forever, with aging and all. That's part of the reason why Tobey never returned for Spider-Man 4, because he was getting too old and his back couldn't take it anymore. Could only handle a small role like in No Way Home. In an interview with Esquire Middle East to promote Uncharted, Tom Holland was asked whether he would be happy to portray Nathan Drake beyond his 30s. This was in response to the interviewer contrasting Holland's past statements about departing from his Spider-Man role once he was 30. Holland quickly clarified the Spider-Man remark, stating that it had been somewhat misinterpreted. Holland made it clear that he wasn't indicating that if he was still performing the character at that age, he'd be some washed-up has-been. Could he be alluding to Tobey and Andrew's prior Spider-Man appearances? Cheeky little bugger. But of course, this isn't the case. He subsequently reassured the interviewer by adding that just because he's still portraying Spider-Man in his 30s doesn't mean he's a washed-up has-been. There's a bit of contradiction there, Spidey. Additionally, everyone appears to believe that there can only be one Spider-Man at any given moment, and that the name can't be shared by two characters or performers. For example, the sequel to Insomniac Games' critically successful Marvel's Spider-Man is expected to pit Peter Parker and Miles Morales against Venom and Kraven the Hunter on equal ground. It's not like the Marvel Cinematic Universe couldn't start presenting Miles Morales in the following trilogy, especially because Aaron Davis, who was played by Donald Glover, was already established in Spider-Man Homecoming. Much like in the comics and video games, Peter Parker and Miles Morales could both call themselves Spider-Man while they fight criminals in New York. Isn't that something to look forward to? Disney, make it happen! Also, Sony isn't going to let Holland walk away from this deal, especially after Spider-Man No Way Home was such a huge box office hit, despite the fact that the film was released amid a global pandemic. It's also unlikely that Holland would want to leave such a significant role behind, and that his words in interviews are all a ruse, especially because Peter Parker's character has just entered a totally different world. You can't replace him in now since this journey has just begun, especially because he's all alone, with no one to talk to. Not even May. We'd like to know how his life turns out afterwards, don't we? Spider-Man No Way Home was monumental. Despite the fact that Spider-Man No Way Home was released in December, it continues to hold a special place in our hearts. In some respects, the film seems like the end of an era, while in others, it feels like Tom Holland's Peter Parker is just getting started. It's unknown whether Holland will reprise his role as Spider-Man. While the actor appears to have mixed thoughts about returning, he's not ruling out a return to Marvel. Holland talked about handing the torch to someone else back in November, as we mentioned earlier in the video. In an interview with Deadline's Pete Hammond, Holland was joined by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. The Dynamic Three opened up about their initial encounter and what drew them to the project in the first place. Aunt May is murdered in the film, and Peter pays her a visit at a grave in the closing scene. Hammond drew attention to this sad scene, and Holland explained that he was, in a sense, bidding farewell to his character. Yes, since it was emotional, there was a sense for him as an actor that this was the final time he might potentially throw on the costume. And a lot of that emotion came from the act of saying goodbye, which is one of the film's major themes. At the same time, Holland was able to depend on his own experiences and sentiments in those moments. And as a result, the scenes felt like a roller coaster of emotions. Happiness, sadness, anger, all in one. This film has everything going for it. In reality, No Way Home was the result of 3 generations of movies, so the performers had to enter into some really emotional and difficult situations. And the way Holland talks about the production in interviews reveals how excited he was to be there and embody Spider-Man like never before. And he did. This is the closest Peter Parker we've ever had to the comics. So well done, Tom Holland. Look at what's transpired in his life since he took on the role, and you'll see how hard he worked for it. Do you believe he would have been as successful if he hadn't been so talented? No, we don't think so. Additionally, he had the opportunity to work alongside Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and they were all in the same film. Don't you think that was perhaps the best part of the whole movie? So, it's understandable for Tom to become emotional when interviewers ask about his career prospects when his contract has expired. We become emotional as well because we're so proud of him for perfectly portraying the comic book character, which must have been really difficult. But as we all know, nothing good in life ever comes easily. We don't really think he's going to retire anytime soon. But then again, anything can happen. Who knows? Are you hoping Tom Holland returns as Spider-Man? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below.